My colleagues, we are back from recess. We are at Speaker Nelson's amendment. Do we have any colleagues that have any questions to her amendment or any amendment to her amendment? There being none, are there any objection? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Shelton, thank you.
I have a very simple amendment to make. It is on page 2, letter A of subsection 40124 of section 5. And that amendment would be to strike 90 and replace it with 30. So the amendment would read, the mayor upon taking office shall select and appoint a municipal planning council within 30 calendar days after taking office. I think 30 calendar days is a sufficient amount of time from the time a mayor will take his or her oath to get things in order, to pick a council, to appoint them, have them accept that appointment, and then to swear them in.
All right, do we have any questions or any? Yes,
Just to
Senator.
clarify, it would be 30 calendar days.
Okay. Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. And Mr. Chair, as you know, during the public hearing that I attended, I made the comment that I think one of the important things is to a bill to be proffered to actually do that, to ensure that these mayors do appoint a council as soon as they get into office. And I mentioned it should be 10 days. But after speaking with the senator who made the amendment just now, if you think about it, Mr. Chair, you're elected on around November 5th. You don't get sworn in until January 5th. That's 60 days. 60 days to start preparing your office, start to preparing who you're going to hire, and as well as who you're going to put on the council. To me, it was sufficient enough. As soon as you're sworn in, 10 days. But then it was brought to my attention, Mr. Chair, that these letters have to go out as soon as he's sworn as a mayor. So once these letters get out, it needs ample time for the response to come back from these appointees. So I stand in full support of the 30-day marker and appreciate the amendment made into this section. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Therese.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order. This is a new section not included in the amendment that we're actually on right now.
This is a new amendment to the original bill because Senator Therese, Senator Peto's amendment.
No, but we're on the Vice Speaker's amendment, aren't we?
That's correct.
And this doesn't amend that. How are you amending her amendment? You're adding a new section to it?
No. The section that the speaker brought up was, we know, we all have to come to an understanding that the legal will sit down and adjust what section is what section. Okay? So are we?
Sorry, I'm going with the written amendment, but that's not what we're using here, I was just told.
Okay.
That one I'm going to throw away. So I'm sorry, if we could repeat the amendment, then I was reading that. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, point of order, information, if the, I don't even know if it's a point of information, but can you please ask the sponsor of the amendment to read it over again?
Yes, Senator Amanda.
Sure, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The amendment can be found on section 2 of Speaker Nelson's original amendment in section 5, subsection 40124, letter A. And it is to change 90 calendar days to 30 calendar days.
Okay. Are there any further objection?
Oh, no.
Or
I just have another amendment after.
you have another amendment after this? Okay, so why don't we move to vote on this amendment so we can solidify this amendment, and then we can move to if there's any other amendments to the amendments. Okay, Senator Pt.2-2.
Mr. Chair, I'm just thinking about the 30 days, and that's a little bit too short because whenever you want to appoint a municipal planning council member, right? The first thing that you want to do is to have that person get a police clearance and all these things. Because you just don't appoint people that, you might be appointing an individual who's got criminal record, and therefore the municipal planning council might request for a police clearance.
But
The court.
Senator, I think we need to understand it says select and appoint. Doesn't mean they're confirmed yet. You're just picking who you wanted, and then until you sign off, then you get sworn in. Then you're officially in the MPC. This is just the mayor saying, I want Joe Terlai, I want Amanda Shelton. It's not getting further than this.
I'm just saying that
Right.
maybe 30 days might not meet that requirement, because when I was mayor, if I was to appoint a member to my municipal planning council, I need to know the background of this individual. And if he does have a criminal records, I would not allow that person to serve as a municipal planning council. That's all that I'm saying. So
So how many days are you asking to amend, objecting to her 30 days then?
I would think that maybe 35 days would do it.
Senator Amanda? Senator Amanda has no objection to that, to increasing it to 35 days.
Point
At
of
least-
order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We are entertaining an amendment to an amendment. Either he has an objection, and we call the vote on the amendment to the amendment, and then we move on first. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Senator Amanda?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to change my amendment to 35 calendar days.
Okay. Are there any questions from my colleagues on Senator Amanda's amendment? Are there any objection? There being none, motion passes. Are there any further questions or amendments to the original amendment proffered by Madam Speaker? Yes, Senator Sabina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a point of inquiry regarding on the second page of the amendment. On number 3, where if the municipal planning council is not established and the executive director becomes the acting mayor, and then that acting mayor shall nominate members for the MPC, who shall be approved by 2/3 vote. So I think what happens in the case that 2/3 vote is not received? I think that may be something that should be considered in this amendment. I don't have anything to proffer at the moment, but if I can get some, perhaps maybe legal counsel to weigh in on this measure in the case where 2/3 vote is not met.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes,
So-
the author of the bill, or the
Thank-
amendment.
If I may respond. This was also questioned by another one of our colleagues, and the way the votes are entered is a little bit different. And so the intent of the 2/3 vote is to ensure that we get the most members from the Mayor's Council of Guam to vote on the MPC. So encourage all of us to work together to ensure this MPC. There was a recommendation, perhaps we just do majority, but majority can be only 3 members show up, and it's the majority of the 3, so you only need 2 votes. And so we chose 2/3 just to ensure that as they met, we could have as many members of the MCOG come in and discern on the MPC.
All right, Senator Sabina, does that answer the question? Because we need to remind ourselves how our majority votes, the same thing as what was interpreted by court or by the Attorney General's office. Majority is the majority of who are present for the vote. That's what the key would be. So if 2/3, if there's only less than 10 of the Mayor's Council present, 2/3 of them will decide.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that answers a different question. My question is if the 2/3 vote is not met.
2/3, the 2/3
yeah.
votes.
If they're unable to agree, if 2/3 of the mayor's council is unable to agree, what is the course of action there? I mean, I don't know if we've considered that.
I would ask the sponsor of that, if
Thank you,
two-thirds.
Mr. Chair. If 2/3 are not met, then you just apply to the Robert Rules of Order or whatever book of order they go by, whether it's the Masons or Robert Rules. Or you can submit new personnel so that the council will be, I mean, I'm not going to tell them how to do their job if they can't come to 2/3. If we want to go down that far, we can, but I'm just saying if there's communication amongst people, right? Leaders, we communicate, I don't like this, I like this. Maybe if you change this person, I'll, reconsider this. It's a collaborative effort. They must reach 2/3.
Understood. Senator Sabina, Paris, does that meet your, I've asked legal also about that, and if 2/3 votes are not received, then there is no vote. That's the rule of thumb. If you don't get the votes, you don't get the votes.
Okay, I guess.
And you start all over
Maybe
again.
we'll cross that bridge when that happens.
Yes.
I suppose. Thank you.
Senator Kelly, did you have nothing? Okay, so now we're going to go back to the amendment proffered by the speaker with the amendments already in place. No, she didn't. No, she didn't. Are there any questions by my colleagues on the original amendment? Senator Therese.
If we could go to page 3 of the amendment, where it says the legislature may, in its discretion, provide an additional 30 days. I don't think we are in any kind of position to do that. I would like to make it consistent and put it back with the Mayor's Council of Guam, where all the rest of this section lies. So it's the Mayor's Council of Guam that's going to decide whether they like the replacements. If the Mayor's Council is going to decide whether they've established, they're one within 125 days under subsection C. So I just feel like it should be them who takes the reasons why there's not a council in place and deals with it. So I would just amend legislature to read Mayor's Council of Guam.
Okay, so on the top line, line 1, the legislature may, you want to strike that out. That's what
That's
you're
right.
asking.
And in addition, it's because the legislature has to act by bill and have
Right.
and enact it into a law. So we won't be able to act quickly on that.
So you're saying to strike, the legislatures may, in its discretion, provide, line 1 where it starts the legislature, and end on line 2 at the word section.
I'm not striking the line. I'm changing the word legislature to the Mayor's Council of Guam.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment to that, though, and a
Yes.
question. But if you read that subsection B in its entirety, the way that it's written makes sense, because what you're requiring is the mayors to submit a memo to the Mayor's Council of Guam and the legislator providing the reasons for their failure to comply with the section. And then, so it's presumed that since you're also submitting it to the legislature, then the legislature can also, agree then, because it seems that in many of these things, the legislature is the one to ensure that things are done, or to verify that there's compliance. And so if there's not compliance, then it's also incumbent on the legislature to then award additional time. What I'm saying is that if you read it in its entirety, it seems to make sense the way that it's done. And if you take the legislature out of one part, it doesn't, it's illogical. So I can appreciate who's in charge and who does things, but the fact that you're required to submit to a body that's going to confirm or determine that you've complied should also be the same body that would give you leeway if you didn't comply. So I would recommend we just leave it as is. It's logical in its read.
All right. Senator Tello. That's one objection to your amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I understand what the previous speaker was talking about as well, but and I did talk to the author of this, particularly because of the 91 days, exactly when does the mayor have to submit that they did not establish a municipality. And while I was looking at that, in section B, it says pursuant to subsection A of this section. Pursuant to subsection A. So it already defines the amount of days that they have to comply, and if they don't do it, then they have to submit it to the Mayor's Council of Guam and in Legislature in Guam to provide the reason for his or her failure of that section. Now, if we were to incorporate the legislature, that it may have its discretion provided in 30 days, I mean, there's a whole, not program, but a system in which to decide, okay, is this a speaker that does it? Do we bring it on the session floor to decide this? Who really decides this? And if you go to section C, so if you take that out, you go straight to section C. And if the MPC is not established within 125 days, which it already gives 125 days of the mayor's taking office, the executive director shall appoint the members of the MPC. So I think, striking out the legislature may just have another bureaucracy involved in, and we talk about time frame, and we talk about trying to get this through as easy as possible. Of course, the voting is important, but this might just be another layer of bureaucracy moving forward, and if it was struck out, so I definitely support this amendment, and it goes straight into C. It says not established, it's already telling 125 days, then the mayor's council shall move forward with this. So it makes sense to strike that out. So I support that amendment.
My colleagues, I'm going to ask for a quick recess because, let me just ask for a recess. My colleagues, so we have returned from recess. Are there any objection to the amendment that Senator Therese proffered, changing the legislature to the Mayor's Council of Guam? You have an objection? We have, I know we had an objection from Senator Torres. So, okay, you object. So those in favor of the amendment proffered by Senator Therese Terlai to change the word, line number 1, the legislature may, to the Mayor's Council of Guam, may. All in favor, please raise your right hand, or any hand. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Amendment passes. Any other amendment to the main amendment? Yes, Senator Therese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to add in the very beginning of the amendment where it says vacancies, the statute, the 40110 vacancies. I'd just like to add the word permanent vacancies. So to add the word permanent.
So, Madam Senator Therese, it's under that 4110 point, then we write the word permanent vacancies.
Yes,
right?
this
Okay,
is-
add the word permanent.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any questions, Madam Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I support this amendment. We try to restore a piece of the original bill to reference this.
Thank you. Are there any objection to the amendment proffered by Senator Therese? There being none, motion passes. Senator Therese?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I passed out one more amendment. It should be on your desks. And it's for Part B. And it's adding the words, as determined by the Guam Election Commission. And if you could just, on your copies, strike out, or the Attorney General of Guam. Just, I don't want to move that. I only want to move, as determined by the Guam Election Commission.
And strike out or the Attorney General? Strike that one out?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. So my amendment would clarify the gap that we have today, and that is we have a law that says if there is an inability or failure to perform, there's a vacancy in the office. But no one, as we have seen today, is willing to make that determination, so I'm putting it on the Guam Election Commission, where I think the other statute puts it on the Guam Election Commission, so that's why I've chosen to put them in this amendment. So it would be, they would be the ones to determine whether there's a resignation, a death, a removal from office, an inability, or a failure to perform the duties of the mayor. And for a permanent vacancy, it would be declared by the Guam Election Commission.
We're removing the, on our amendment that was passed
That's
out,
correct.
just remove the
Yeah.
or the Attorney General of Guam, and it's just the Guam Election Commission will determine, as was brought up during the panel discussion. Are there any objection to this? Are there any questions for this? There being none, any objection to this amendment? Yes.
Could I just clarify also? I want to make this on the record so that the public, if they're watching, will understand. This is existing law that tells us how to replace a mayor if there are less than 240 days left in this
That's
term.
correct. Yes.
And so right now, it's the existing law that tells us if there are 240 days left in the term, there's no election. The existing law says it goes to the Municipal Planning Council to select, and the legislature confirms. People might think that is awkward, crazy even, but that's the existing law, and that's been in place for years. So we're not changing that right now. We're just saying who's going to determine. So I'm just saying it's consistent because, and then when we declared under a temporary vacancy, we used the same pattern that it would be the Municipal Planning Council with confirmation by the legislature because, I just thought it would good to be consistent.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
we can all argue whether that's a good idea to have the municipal planning council do it or the legislature confirm it versus having the governor appointed. Those are all options, but we were following existing law. I just want to put that on the record because we were having some discussion with legal, and so that might be one of the issues that's brought up, why the MPC appoints the new mayor or the acting mayor, why not the governor? And I don't think we've had time to really fully study that, but we're following existing law that allows for that mechanism. Thank you, Mr.
All right, thank
Chair.
you. Are there any objection to this amendment? There being none, motion passes. Now to go back to the main amendment. Are there any objection to the main amendments with the amendments in place? There being none, amendment passes. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole with a recommendation to place Bill number 259-35 COR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, and further amended in the Committee on the Whole on the third reading file.
Senator Reese?
I would like to make just 2 sentences on the bill as a whole before we move it up, because we're not able to do it up there, if the mover wouldn't mind, or or on the motion, I would just like to say, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Let me just withdraw my motion so that you can entertain it.
All right. The motion has been withdrawn. If any of my colleagues would like to speak about basically what we've done today, I will begin with Senator Therese Terlai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we came in here with a very serious duty. We are concerned about the people of Jotnya. We are concerned. We hear them. And of course, no one wants to be without a mayor. And no one especially wants to know that your mayor is in jail with very serious allegations. And so I don't want anyone to think that that does not enrage me, and it does not make anyone have all those emotions. But I feel like we've been trying to be very deliberate here, and we have preserved the right of the petition that is being circulated currently in the village, and they continue to have the right of recall. And nothing affects, if there is a guilty verdict in February when the trial goes, or as soon as that trial goes, that nothing affects the automatic triggering of a vacancy and a special election. Or if it's too late, then it will be, as the law provides, appointment by the Municipal Planning Council. And so those remedies are still available. And of course, the legislature may still have remedies available, but I feel like I just am thankful that my colleagues have shown we're very concerned, yet we're also, trying to be as fair as possible to the people in the village, and to also allow them to have what they have said they want, and that is somebody to act when they're concerned that there's no one available to act. And I want to also put in the record, we were not able to have the Attorney General here to clarify for us whether this person is able to act or not. And that's one of the questions still pending, that, thanks to the Vice Speaker, that she posed to him, is whether, actions in these circumstances are valid, whether they can continue to act. But as it stands now, no one has declared for us that they are unable to do that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Lee.
Mr. Dosmasi, Mr. Chair, I just have one last amendment that they're making copies and we'll circulate it. So if I could just ask everybody's indulgence for a brief 1-minute recess while they circulate those copies.
Yes, we're on recess. My colleagues, we're back from recess. Senator Lee, did you still have your amendment you want to present, or? Okay, then, Madam Speaker, you had a motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation to place Bill number 259-35 COR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, and further amended in the Committee of the Whole on the third reading file.
On the motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole with a recommendation to place in the third reading file, are there any objection?
With a to-do pass.
If there are no objection, we stand in recess.
We are back from recess. Senator Joseph Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to report back to the body that Bill number 259-35 CR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriation and Housing was deliberated and further amended in the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation to place on the third reading file.
On the motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation to place on the third reading file, are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader, Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, you are recognized.
Sainama'asi, Madam Speaker. We have exhausted, yes. I move to recess until 2 p.m. tomorrow. We have exhausted items on the second reading file, and I move that we go into consideration of the daily file.
Senator Marsh Taitano, Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Sainama'asi, Madam Speaker. We have exhausted items on the second reading file, and I move that we go to the third reading file.
There's been a motion. Are there any objections to moving to the third reading file? No objections. Motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader, Senator Marsh Taitano.
Madam Speaker, I move to recess until 2:30 p.m. tomorrow.
On the motion to recess to 2:30 p.m., are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. We recess to 2:30. Thank you, colleagues.